Pelicans haven't called the Charlotte Hornets and said, hey, do you want to do Zion Williamson?
The Pelicans would make Zion Williamson available ahead of trying to get into that top end of the draft.
But the Pelicans are among teams seriously pursuing that #2 overall pick.
I would have never thought that I'd ever make a video on this. I think that the career arc and trajectory of Zion Williamson is getting ridiculous at this point. I mean, in the past week alone, there was just a whole bunch of new information that I can't even believe how much it's progressed since. So before we get to the content, we are running a huge giveaway, $1,000 between 5 subscribers that turn on my notifications on this channel, announced on the first day of free agency, to thank you guys for your support and make this push to 800K subscribers. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. The NFL and NBA season are officially over, and I need something to hold me over until at least the NFL season comes back. So I've been playing prize picks for the WNBA and the MLB, and I've been fairly successful. It's a good way to get some extra action on games that I wouldn't really watch otherwise. I post my picks onto my Instagram story daily, and I've been hitting on a decent amount of them. And right now, when you use my promo code microphone, they'll double your deposit up to $100. Mike check 1212. What's going on, everybody? I'm gonna do my best not to bring up the Zion Williamson OnlyFans model stripper baby mama drama because I don't think there's much more to say. Only I just want to remind you guys that Zion Williamson quite literally paid Mariah Mills $107,000 a month for no reason at all whatsoever. Now that I got that off of my chest, let's discuss what's happened ever since. The 2019 NBA draft was known for one major prospect, a player that was the best NBA prospect that we've ever seen since LeBron James. And when the New Orleans Pelicans hit the #1 overall pick in the draft lottery and got the opportunity to select Zion Williamson, well, immediately you saw Zion Williamson looking frustrated during the draft lottery. I guess he really wanted to go to New York. But every decision since, the New Orleans Pelicans did a remarkable job building around Zion Williamson. They traded Anthony Davis to the Los Angeles Lakers for a load of draft picks, Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, and Lonzo Ball. The draft picks also included the #4 pick in that NBA draft that they traded to the Atlanta Hawks so they could select DeAndre Hunter. And throughout the offseason, it looked like David Griffin hit the ground running on building a good team around Zion. You could say what you want, but the New Orleans Pelicans have always had a competitive team around Zion Williamson. Yeah, they didn't necessarily nail the head coaching hire. And yes, they didn't become immediate contenders in the Western Conference, primarily because, well, they were a very young team. But a good example of this is the fact that Lonzo Ball quite literally remade his jump shot while working with the jump shot guru with the New Orleans Pelicans. That's not something that you saw prior to this. We're building a culture down there. There was one problem. Could Zion Williamson stay healthy? We already had that incident at Duke University where his shoe split in half and he had to take some time off. But in the NBA, the moment he got drafted, it seemed like he put on a little weight. I mean, when you compare Duke University Zion to rookie year Zion or sophomore year Zion, clearly you're not looking at the same Zion Williamson. And this was a theme throughout Zion's career. There's no question in anyone's mind when Zion Williamson's on the basketball court, he is one of the best players, if not the best young player in the entire NBA. I mean, it's easy to forget, but this young man is quite literally about to turn 23 in about a few weeks. But that's the problem. In his rookie year, he played 24 games. His sophomore season was his most complete season to date. He played 61 games, and in that season, he averaged 27 points per game off of a scorching 61% from the field. This past year, when Zion Williamson did play, the New Orleans Pelicans got off to a 17-12 start. And through it all, I have to admit, the Pelicans did a masterful job building a team around Zion consistently. They were loaded with draft picks, and they made moves that made sense, like acquiring CJ McCollum from the Portland Trail Blazers for quite a bargain, might I add. During the 2022 trade deadline, the New Orleans Pelicans received received CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell, and all they had to do was give up Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Didi Louzada, and a 2022 first-round pick that was protected, and 2 future second-round picks. During the 2022 season, the New Orleans Pelicans were able to make it to the playoffs, and in the first round of that playoffs, when they were facing off against defending Western Conference champion Phoenix Suns, they put up one hell of a fight, and you really started to see some of these young players shine. Players like Herb Jones, for instance, who was establishing a niche as a scrappy defender and a pest that was getting inside Chris Paul's head. Brandon Ingram has been taking strides as a go-to scorer and one of the premier players in the NBA, and he hasn't even hit his prime yet. CJ McCollum was a very dependable scorer. Jonas Valanciunas was a consistent double-double machine and had been for the last 4 years of his career, as a matter of fact. His team was built masterfully, and everyone thought that if the New Orleans Pelicans got Zion Williamson back, then they would be a force to be reckoned with, and we saw that during the 2022 to 2023 season, but once again, Zion Williamson had trouble staying healthy, and through it all, you were seeing some pretty strange behavior. Let's put the weight stuff aside. You remember that trade that the New Orleans Pelicans made for CJ McCollum? Zion Williamson didn't even call him to welcome him to the team, which prompted his ex-teammate JJ Redick to roast him on First Take, saying this.
Hey, look, I was his teammate. I can describe him as a detached teammate.
On top of that, there were rumors about Zion Williamson's family not being a huge fan of the New Orleans Pelicans organization. And now we're getting some very interesting rumors. Within the past week, we heard from Shams Charania himself, the New Orleans Pelicans want to make a move for Scoot Henderson. And now it seems like we're getting even more information about this. Very shortly after what Shams said, Mark Stein came out and said that a well-placed source thinks that the New Orleans Pelicans would indeed consider dealing Zion Williamson to move into the top 3 of the NBA draft and draft Scoot Henderson. Scoot Henderson is perceived as the second best prospect in the entire NBA draft, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go second overall because the Charlotte Hornets have the second overall pick and Scoot Henderson might be a questionable fit with LaMelo Ball. As time progressed, we got a very interesting report from Brian Windhorst saying that Zion Williamson has no relationship with the New Orleans Pelicans amidst trade rumors. This part is nuts. This is new. I mean, this is stuff that we haven't covered before, but this sounds very familiar, and there's a pattern in Zion's behavior that makes it look like it could be the case. According to Brian Windhorst, there's no relationship between Zion and the organization, and minimal relationship between Zion and his teammates, from what I understand. This is insane. I mean, it's insane because you're talking about your franchise cornerstone, the human being that you built your team around, being detached from his teammates, and the beginning of Zion's career is nothing like the beginning of LeBron James's career. If LeBron James had what Zion Williamson has right now, he would have probably won a couple of championships during his first stint with the Cleveland Cavaliers. You have to give David Griffin his props. He built a remarkable team around Zion Williamson. Through it all, it doesn't seem like Zion really appreciated it very much. And the thing is, it seems like there is consistency here. So the number one team that could potentially trade for Zion Williamson is without a doubt the Charlotte Hornets. Zion Williamson is from Spartanburg, South Carolina, which is about an hour and 20 minutes away from Charlotte, North Carolina. That's pretty close to home. And let's be honest, I think the NBA and the entire NBA community would rejoice. I think New Orleans Pelicans fans and Charlotte Hornets fans and just human beings that aren't fans of either sport would love if this trade would go down. So it looks like Zion and David Griffin had a meeting. Zion Williamson and David Griffin met this afternoon at the Saints headquarters. So Zion's future is definitely very, very much in the air currently, and we're hearing some rumors as well, like this one, according to Mark Stein once again. The Pelicans are considering the possibility of dealing Zion Williamson to Charlotte for the number 2 pick. Based on what I'm hearing, yes, the Pelicans are legitimately considering. It doesn't mean that they would 100% do it, but they are considering the prospect of trying to assemble a deal for Charlotte's number 2 pick that would feature Zion Williamson. I gotta admit, if you're the Charlotte Hornets, you gotta feel some kind of way about this situation. On one hand, if you trade the number 2 pick and get Zion Williamson, and he's reinvigorated by his move, you know, the fact that he lives close to home, he's training right now, he's working hard, LaMelo Ball lights a fire, and as well, and these two become one of the most entertaining duos in NBA history. It could be a home run. At the same time, if you're the Charlotte Hornets, if you're Mitch Kupchak, you might be sitting there and thinking, why the hell are the Pelicans trading Zion to begin with? I mean, this guy was supposed to be the best prospect since LeBron James, and they're just willing to trade him for the number 2 overall pick for Scoot Henderson? Scoot Henderson is great, don't get me wrong, but you don't know what Scoot Henderson's gonna become. Scoot Henderson could bust for all you know. At the same time, you can say the same thing about Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson could bust for all you know. And so far, throughout 4 years of his career, Zion Williamson has only played in 10 more games during the first 4 years of his career than Greg Oden did. Another player that was very talented, that was supposed to be the next Shaq of his generation, but unfortunately, injuries got in the way of that. Now, there's a lot of conflicting reports. According to Shams Charania himself, Pelicans want Scoot Henderson, but the Hornets don't want Zion Williamson. They want someone else instead. Watch.
I don't know if the Hornets would want Zion Williamson. I think who the Hornets want, from what I'm told, is Brandon Ingram.
Man, oh my God, this is, talk about a legacy-altering risk. Talk about the biggest risk of your career. If you're David Griffin, trading Brandon Ingram, which is appearing to be your team's most dependable and best player. I mean, you could say it's Zion, but Brandon Ingram at least makes it onto the court. I don't know if I can say the same about Zion. For Scoot Henderson, a player that 100% would fit the developmental timeline of Zion Williamson and is significantly younger. The problem with a trade like this is it's very difficult to gauge the value of the number 2 pick in this year's NBA draft. You know what you're getting in Brandon Ingram. You don't know what you're getting in Scoot Henderson. All we do know is so far, according to the Draft Express, both Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller worked out this week in Charlotte, and Scoot Henderson was definitely the better of the two. This is just one gigantic puzzle that could go in a myriad of directions. I mean, the Hornets could stand pat and select Brandon Miller. The Hornets could stand pat and select Scoot Henderson. Is Scoot Henderson the best fit for the Charlotte Hornets? I don't necessarily know, but the Hornets could also trade the pick to the New Orleans Pelicans for Zion Williamson. We could potentially get a LaMelo Ball, Zion Williamson dynamic duo. The Charlotte Hornets could send the number 2 overall pick for Brandon Ingram, but would the Pelicans feel comfortable taking the risk, rolling the dice on Zion once again? Is that an upgrade to your team? Scoot Henderson, Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, Jonas Valanciunas over having Brandon Ingram on that roster? Would that be enough to motivate Zion Williamson to get back into shape and make it onto the basketball court? I don't necessarily know. There's so many variables in this particular instance. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.